The night I thought I met forever wasn't extraordinary by any stretch. I was just another guy at Victor and Zanab's apartment, a rented place with mismatched furniture and the smell of overcooked samosas hanging in the air. The living room was a patchwork of cheap beanbags and old couch cushions that doubled as chairs. It was one of those game nights where the rules didn't matter, and everyone was a little too competitive to admit they didn't care who won. Victor had texted me earlier that week, "Bro, we're doing game night. Bring your sarcasm." He knew that was my default setting. I had just landed the lead engineering role at Brightlayer Systems, my first real taste of success. The adrenaline hadn't worn off yet. I felt like I was on the cusp of something big. I'd spent the last 2 years grinding, pushing lines of code like they were the lifeblood of my future, and that night was supposed to be a break from all that. When I walked in, Selena was already there, her laugh echoing off the walls. Like music I hadn't realized I'd been missing. She was perched on the edge of an old ottoman, holding a card from some new game I'd never heard of, gesturing animatedly at Zanab, who was doubling over in laughter. Selena's hair was pulled back into a ponytail that somehow defied gravity. Her eyes sparkled with the kind of confidence that makes you feel like you've met her before, even if you know you haven't. It wasn't love at first sight. That's too easy, too convenient, and too romantic to be real. What I felt was recognition, like I'd found a missing piece I didn't even know I'd lost. She caught my eye across the room, mid-laugh, and something inside me settled. Not in a falling in love way. More like, this makes sense. She tilted her head and gave me a smile. It wasn't shy or coy, just open, like she'd been expecting me to walk in. Victor roped me into a game of charades and Selena was my partner, by some twist of fate. She was quick, lightning quick. Every guess I made she seemed to know before I even opened my mouth. We won, of course. We high-fived and grinned at each other like we'd just run a marathon together. After that, we ended up in the kitchen, half leaning against the counter, half in the fridge, trying to find the last of the cold beers before Victor claimed them all. "Idris, right?" she asked, her voice smooth, like she'd practiced saying, "My name?" "Yeah," I replied. The word caught a little in my throat. "Nice to finally meet you. Victor talks about you like you're some kind of wizard," she teased, rolling her eyes with a softness that told me she was listening. "More like a wizard's apprentice," I laughed. "I'm still figuring it out." She grinned. "A humble wizard. Rare breed." I found myself telling her about my work at Brightlayer, how I'd just been promoted, how I was leading a team on a new project. She listened, really listened, nodding, asking questions that made me feel like what I did actually mattered. She told me about her job in corporate communications, and how sometimes the hardest part was keeping a straight face during board meetings. The night blurred into more laughter, more games, more conversations that felt too easy. Every time I looked around, there she was, either talking to someone else or looking back at me, like we were orbiting the same sun. By the time people started gathering their bags and thanking Victor and Zanab for hosting, Selena and I were leaning against the same wall, our arms brushing, like magnets. "Walk me to my car?" she asked, her keys jingling in her hand. "Of course," I said, and I meant it. The air outside was cool, the kind of Nairobi night that smelled like rain, even when the clouds were nowhere in sight. We walked slowly, neither of us in a hurry to get to wherever we were going. "Can I confess something?" she said as we reached her car, an old Toyota, with more character than chrome. "Anything," I said. She looked at me, her eyes serious for the first time all night. "You're different. I don't know what it is. But I feel like I've known you for a while." I wanted to tell her I felt the same, but the words stuck in my throat, like honey. Instead, I managed, "Yeah, me too." She leaned in and kissed my cheek, a soft, warm press of lips that sent electricity racing down my spine. "Good night, Idris," she whispered. I watched her drive away, tail lights blinking like little red promises in the dark. I stood there for a long time, the smell of her perfume lingering in the air, the echo of her laugh still ringing in my ears. That night, I went home and couldn't sleep. I kept replaying our conversations, her smile, the way she'd looked at me, like I was already someone important to her. I'd met a lot of people in my life, but no one had ever made me feel seen like that. I didn't know then how much I would give to keep that feeling. I didn't know how many times I'd hold my breath hoping she'd laugh like that again. How many nights I'd lie awake wondering if I'd imagined the spark between us. But that night, standing in my small apartment with the city humming outside, I let myself believe I'd found forever. And for a while, that was enough. That he paid for his coffee, clapped me on the shoulder, and said, "Hang in there." I did. I hung in there like a man waiting for a sign that never came. I stopped mentioning Nimba's sink, stopped talking about the patent, about the possibilities. When she asked about work, I gave her the smallest answers I could. One word: lifeless. She didn't seem to care. The silence between us became something I wore like a second skin. Some nights I'd lie in bed, the glow of her phone screen lighting her face as she scrolled through posts and pictures. I wondered what she saw there, that she didn't see in me. I wondered if she was picturing a life without me, a life where someone else filled the spaces. I'd close my eyes and remember the game night when we met, the way her laughter had felt like a promise. I'd replay our early mornings in that tiny apartment. Coffee mugs lined up like sentries, her voice humming a song I never knew the words to. Back then, I thought we were building something real, but what we built was a monument to appearances. A house that looked good on the outside, but was empty on the inside. A car that shone, but took us nowhere. I'd become a ghost in my own marriage. Even at work, I could feel the shift. Nimba Sync was finished, at least in the sense that the code worked. It was stable, efficient, a product that could change the way Brightlayer moved data. But every time I thought about telling Selena, I heard her voice in my head, that mocking tone she used when she called me Prophet Idris. I could see her eyes rolling, that smirk that said, "Another of your dreams." So I kept it to myself. I documented everything, every late-night line of code, every test case, every feature. I made sure no one could take it from me. Not Brightlayer, not Selena,